On my 16th birthday, it rained so hard in Columbus, Ohio, that puddles covered the streets like little lakes. My name is Amaris Phelan. I stood in the living room holding the tiny cupcake they had given me. I looked at it and thought maybe this birthday would be different. Maybe something good will finally happen. Then my dad opened the front door. He looked straight at me with cold eyes. "You're old enough now. Get out. We're done carrying dead weight," he said. Behind him, my stepmom, Seraphine, smirked like she had been waiting for this moment. My 14-year-old half-sister, Zephra, crossed her arms and said loud enough for the neighbors to hear, "Leave already. Don't make the house smell worse than it already does." There was no yelling, no second chance, no hugs. Just the door slammed in my face and I heard the lock click. I walked down the street, feeling the rain soak my hoodie and shoes. They squished with every step. I had $23 in cash from my mom's sister, who still sent me birthday cards. I had no phone, no plan, and no place to go. That night, I slept on a park bench at Goodale Park. Before I continue, don't forget to subscribe and join the awesome community. Drop a comment below to tell me where you're watching from and what you think of the story. The next night, I tried a shelter for teens, but they turned me away because I didn't have an ID. I learned quickly where I could sleep, which dumpsters behind restaurants were emptied, which churches left doors open at night, and how to make myself small so no one would notice me. I learned fast that nobody was coming to save me. Weeks later, just when I was starting to feel invisible and hopeless, a black SUV pulled up near a Tim Hortons at dawn. I was digging through the trash behind the restaurant hoping to find something still wrapped and edible. The SUV's tires splashed through puddles, and a man in a fancy coat stepped into the rain without an umbrella. "Amaris Phelan," he said. I froze, ready to run. But he didn't flinch at the smell or the dirt on me. "My name is Thorian Voss," he said. "Your great-aunt just passed away. She left everything to you. But there's one condition, you must accept it right now." I was still soaking wet when I climbed into the warm leather seat of the SUV. The heat made my frozen fingers feel a little better, but it couldn't touch the cold that had already settled in my heart. I needed to go back a little to tell you how everything started to fall apart. My real mom died in a car crash on I-270 when I was just 5. One second she was singing along to the radio. Next a truck crossed the line. I remember the smell of the hospital hallway when my dad walked out holding my hand and told me she wasn't coming home. A year later he brought Seraphine home. She smiled too wide, hugged me too tight, and moved her stuff in before my mom's funeral flowers even wilted. Months later, Zephra was born screaming, and from that day on I became the leftover kid in my own house. Seraphine never hit me, but she made sure I knew I didn't belong. My last name was different, the rules were different, everything was different. Dad changed too. At first it was small things. He stayed up late on the computer after work, saying he was just checking scores. Then the extra money from overtime stopped coming. Bills piled up on the kitchen counter. I later found out he was gambling online, borrowing from one credit card to pay another, taking cash advances at casino ATMs in West Virginia because Ohio didn't have them yet. By the time I was 12, the house felt smaller and smaller. Collectors called during dinner. Repossession trucks circled the block. Seraphine whispered that I was the reason money was tight because Dad still paid child support for me even though I lived there. Zephra learned fast. She would walk past me at school and hiss, "Mistake," loud enough for her friends to laugh. Dad lost his job right after I turned 15. The dealership closed, and nobody wanted to hire a 48-year-old salesman with shaky hands and a gambling flag on his credit report. The fights in the house got louder. Seraphine screamed about foreclosure notices. Dad screamed back that he was this close to a big win. I learned to disappear. I stayed in the library with headphones until closing, anywhere but home. Then came my 16th birthday. Seraphine texted me at school, "Come straight home. We have a surprise party for you." I felt a tiny flutter in my chest. Stupid hope. I should have known better. When I walked in, the living room was dark except for one candle stuck in a grocery store cupcake. Dad, Seraphine, and Zephra stood in a half-circle, their faces flat. No friends, no balloons, just an envelope on the coffee table and a black trash bag already packed with my clothes. Seraphine spoke first, her voice sweet like poison. "We can't keep doing this, Draven. The bank gave us 30 days. We have to sell the house." Dad wouldn't look at me. "You're 16 now in Ohio. You're old enough to be on your own." Zephra rolled her eyes. "We even left your toothbrush in the bag." You're welcome. I stood there holding that stupid cupcake while the candle dripped wax on my hand. I didn't feel it. I just heard Seraphine say, "Take what you need and go. Don't come back. We're changing the locks tonight." I grabbed the backpack they packed for me, walked into the rain, and never looked back. For weeks I survived on my own. The first night I slept under the slide at Goodale Park. The second night the teen shelter turned me away. By the end of the first week, I knew which dumpsters were emptied behind which restaurants, when churches left side doors open, and how to stay small so people wouldn't notice me. I learned that nobody was coming to save me. And then weeks later the black SUV rolled up. Everything changed. Thorian drove the SUV into an empty parking lot of a little diner off East Main Street. He turned off the engine. He didn't speak until the waitress brought us 2 coffees and left. Then he slid a leather folder across the table. Inside was a photograph of an old woman with sharp blue eyes, sitting on a porch swing. Cincinnati was faint in the background. "This is Isolde Viridian, your great-aunt on your mom's side," he said. "She passed away 8 days ago at 90. No husband, no kids, no close relatives except you." I looked at the picture. I had never heard that name before. Thorian kept talking softly. "Isolde built her money the hard way. She started as a welder during the war, bought a small steel plant near Cincinnati in the 1950s, and turned it into Viridian Holdings. When she sold the company in 2009, she had $52 million after taxes. 52 million. The number didn't even feel real. Thorian tapped the photo. "She rewrote her will 3 years ago. Everything goes to you, Amaris Phelan, the only biological granddaughter of her favorite niece. But there's a deadline. You must go to Cincinnati in person within 72 hours or the money goes to a fund for homeless youth. No extensions, no appeals." I finally found my voice. "Why 72 hours? Thorian said, "Because Isolde believed that if you couldn't fight for it when you had nothing, you didn't deserve it when you had everything. I officially notified you 41 minutes ago. That leaves roughly 71 hours. The jet is fueled at Rickenbacker. We can be wheeled up in 30 minutes. I looked at my cracked hands, the dirt under my nails, the hoodie that used to be gray. Part of me wanted to say no, to stay angry at the world. But the bigger part, the part that had slept under bridges and eaten out of trash cans, knew this was the only door that had ever opened. I nodded. Thorian paid the bill and led me out. 20 minutes later we pulled through a private gate south of Columbus. A shiny Gulfstream sat on the tarmac, engines already running. A woman in a navy suit handed me a plastic bag with new sweatpants, a t-shirt and sneakers my exact sizes. I disappeared into the restroom at the FBO, peeled off weeks of street grime under a real shower, and walked out feeling like a new person. When I stepped onto the plane, the flight attendant closed the door behind me. Thorian took the seat across the aisle and handed me a thick binder. "Read the summary on the flight. We landed at London Airport. From there it's a 15-minute drive to the house," he said. The jet climbed high. Columbus disappeared beneath the clouds, and for the first time in weeks I wasn't cold. I opened the binder. Page 1 was a letter in Isolde's own handwriting to me. "If you are reading this, you already know what it feels like to be thrown away. I did too. Cincinnati, 1943. I was 17, pregnant, kicked out with nothing but the clothes on my back. I promised that if I ever made it, I would give one person the same chance I never got. That person is you. But nothing is free. You'll see the rest when you get here. Come quickly. Isolde." I traced the ink with my finger. The plane banked over the Ohio River, and the city lights of Cincinnati sparkled below. 71 hours. I wasn't going to waste a single minute. The plane touched down at London Airport while the sky over Cincinnati was turning pale pink. A black Mercedes waited on the tarmac. Thorian opened the rear door and we drove east along the river. 20 minutes later, the car turned through tall iron gates and climbed a winding road lined with ancient oak trees. The house looked like it came from another century. 3 stories of brick and limestone, wide porches, tall chimneys that seemed to scrape the clouds. The Ohio River glittered behind it. Inside it smelled of lemon oil and old books. A housekeeper in her 60s nodded once and disappeared. Thorian led me up a sweeping staircase and down a hallway full of black and white photographs of steelworkers and factory floors. At the end was a heavy oak door. He typed in a code, pushed it open and stepped aside. The study looked exactly as Isolde had left it. A hospital bed sat in the corner, the monitors dark. Her desk faced floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water. On it sat a single silver laptop. Thorian pressed play. The screen filled with Isolde at 90, thin white hair, oxygen tubes in her nose, but eyes still blazing blue. She smiled at me through the video, and for the first time I felt hope. Maybe, finally, everything was about to change. She looked straight into the camera. Her voice was rough, a little scratchy, but calm and steady. Amaris, if you are watching this, that means you made it in time. That already tells me something very important about you. I was 17 years old in 1943 when my father locked the door behind me in our house in Chicago. I was going to have a baby, I had no money, and I hadn't finished high school. I didn't know where to go or what to do. I slept on the cold, hard streets and in doorways on Wabash Avenue. It was scary. I was hungry all the time. Then one day a small boy just 12 years old who sold newspapers shared half of his hot dog with me. He didn't have much himself, but he gave me half of his food. Then he told me about a church basement where I could stay. That small act of kindness saved my life. I will never forget it. It was a tiny thing, but it mattered so much. After that, I worked very hard. During the war, I welded steel plates to help build ships at the Pullman factory. Every penny I earned, I saved. Later, in 1952, I found a bankrupt steel mill outside Cincinnati. No one else would give money to women like me to try to save it. But I did. I joined 5 other women and we worked hard every day to make the mill work again. We turned it around. By 1980, our company called Veridian Holdings had 3,000 employees. I own most of the company. I never married again. I didn't have any more children. I didn't need to. Work was my family. Work was what kept me alive and gave my life meaning. 3 years ago, the doctors told me I didn't have much time left. They said I only had months. That made me think about family. I wanted to find someone in my family who had a kind heart like my niece, your mother, who died too young. I wanted to find the person who could carry on that kindness. I hired investigators to help me. They showed me pictures of your father. He had lost all his money because he gambled it away. They showed me your stepmother. She treated you badly, like you were not even important. Then they showed me pictures of you. You were getting straight A's in school. You worked the night shift at a gas station. You gave your last $5 to a kid whose shoes were falling apart. That was enough for me. That told me everything I needed to know. Here is the deal, and there is no arguing. You will get full control of a trust worth $52 million. You cannot spend the main money, the principal, until you are 25, but you can use the income and give money to charity right away. In the next 5 years, you must personally help at least 80 children and teenagers under 21 who are homeless or about to become homeless. You must give them a home, an education, or a trade skill that will help them have a real chance at life. You cannot just write a check and walk away. You must be there when they get the keys to a home. You must be there when the first report card comes home. You must be there when they sign a training or apprenticeship contract. Thorian and an independent auditor will check every case to make sure it is real. If you accept this and complete the entire estate, all the money will be yours completely and forever when you turn 21. But if you walk away right now or fail to reach 80 verified cases in 5 years, all the money will go to a permanent fund for homeless children in Ohio and Kentucky. Your father and his wife will get nothing. Not even a penny. That is on purpose. I am not asking for your forgiveness, Amaris. I am giving you the same choice I never had. Turn your pain into power or let it hurt you forever. Choose. The screen went black. Thorian closed the laptop. Take your time. The guest room is ready if you want to sleep here. I didn't need sleep. I didn't need time. I walked to the window and looked out at the river. For the first time in weeks, I saw real sunlight, bright and golden. Something inside me shifted. Something hard and bright filled my chest. I felt strong. I accept, I said. My voice didn't shake. Thorian allowed himself the smallest smile. I thought you might. The paperwork is on the desk. Sign where the tabs are. I picked up the pen. It was heavy and silver. My hand was steady. As the ink dried, Thorian slid a set of keys across the desk. Welcome home, Miss Phelan, he said. The trust became active the moment I signed the papers. My first distribution of $5 million for operating expenses would be sent the next morning. I held the keys tightly in my hand until the metal dug into my skin. 80 kids. 5 years. I already knew exactly where I would find the first one. 5 years had turned me from a scared, filthy 16-year-old into someone I barely recognized in the mirror at 21. Isolde's home now occupied a renovated 4-story brick warehouse on East 8th Street in downtown Cincinnati, less than 10 minutes from the river mansion that had become both headquarters and my actual home. We ran 3 group homes in Hamilton County, 2 in northern Kentucky, and transitional apartments scattered across the city. Every kid who walked through our doors got a bed the same day, a caseworker the next morning, and a plan before the week was out. Cale Thorne ran point on everything operational. I found him at 15, curled up under the Brent Spence Bridge with a broken arm and a backpack full of stolen library books. He was the first name on the list the day I signed the papers. Now 20, he wore a Beatrice's home polo shirt like it was armor. He could talk to judges, landlords, and scared 14-year-olds without ever raising his voice. He was the brother I never had and the best decision I ever made. We stood at 79 verified cases. One more and the entire $52 million would be unlocked forever. One more and the work could grow beyond anything I had imagined. That afternoon I was in the 3rd-floor conference room reviewing scholarship files when my assistant buzzed. "Mr. Harrove is online. He says it's urgent." Thorian never called just to chat. I picked up the phone. "Amaris, your father has stage 4 small cell lung cancer. Doctors confirmed it last week at the University of Cincinnati Medical Center. He has no insurance. Even basic palliative treatment will cost over $1 million. Seraphine left him 24 months ago and drained the last checking account. Zephyra, your half-sister, is 19 using meth and currently couchsurfing in Dayton. All 3 of them are downstairs in the lobby asking to see you right now." I put the phone down without answering and walked to the window. Below, Draven leaned against the brick wall, coughing into a handkerchief spotted with blood. He looked 70 instead of 53, his face sunken. He wore a Bengals cap pulled low. Seraphine was gone. Thorian was right. Only Draven and Zephyra remained. My half-sister had track marks climbing both arms and twitched like her nervous system was on fire. She kept glancing at the door as if she expected cops to drag her out. Security had already told them that we don't allow walk-ins over 21, but they refused to leave. A small crowd of our residents watched from the steps, curious. Cale appeared beside me. "Do you want me to have them removed?" he asked. "No," I said. "I wanted to do this myself. They had to see that there were consequences, but I also wanted to be fair." I went downstairs and opened the lobby door. Draven looked up, his eyes red from crying. "Amaris, baby, please," he said. Zephyra sneered. "Look at you acting all high and mighty in your little charity palace." I didn't answer. I just turned and walked to the elevator. They followed like stray dogs who weren't sure if the next kick or scrap was coming. In the conference room, I took the head seat at the table. Cale stood behind me. Thorian joined via speakerphone. Draven started crying before the door even closed. Zephyra stayed standing, arms crossed, rocking on her heels. I slid 3 thin manila folders across the table. Inside the first folder were printouts from the Ohio Department of Medicaid showing that Draven qualified for emergency health coverage and a list of hospice providers that accept patients with no income. The second folder contained addresses and phone numbers of every adult inpatient rehab center in the tri-state area that still had Medicaid beds. The third folder had application paperwork for the Ohio Benefit Bank and 2 domestic violence shelters that accepted women with addiction histories. I spoke for the first time. Isolde's home serves minors only. That is in the trust and it will never change. You're all adults. These are the public and non-profit resources available to adults in this state. That is everything we can legally or ethically provide. Draven sobbed harder. "You're my daughter," he said. I said. "On my 16th birthday you told me I wasn't anymore. Nothing has changed. That paperwork hasn't either." Zephyra slammed her fist on the table. "You owe us after everything we did for you." Cale stepped forward half a step. He shut up. I stood. "Security will escort you out. Do not come back." Draven tried to grab my hand as he passed. I pulled away. The door closed behind them. I looked at the whiteboard on the wall. 79 names in dry erase marker. Each name was a kid with a permanent address. Now 1 empty line waited. I picked up the marker. That same evening in a rundown apartment off Reading Road, a 15-year-old girl named Destiny packed a single duffel bag while her mother screamed at her through a crack pipe. saying she was just like her father. Destiny texted the crisis number we keep on every city bus shelter. By midnight she had a bed, a caseworker and a plan. I wrote her name on the board in bold capital letters. 80. The trust unlocked at 12:01 a.m. I didn't sleep. I stood on the roof of the warehouse and watched the city lights flicker across the river, the same river Isolde had watched for 70 years. One chapter had closed for good. Later I let them into the glass-walled conference room on the 4th floor. Draven shuffled in first, clutching a crumpled Kroger bag that held everything he owned. Seraphine crawled forward on her knees the second the door clicked shut, mascara streaking down cheeks that had once been full of contempt. Zephyra slammed the door hard enough to rattle the blinds, then stood behind them, twitching, pupils blown wide. Draven started talking before he even sat down. "It's in my lungs, Amaris. Both lobes. They said without aggressive chemo I have months, maybe less. The bills are already over $200,000 and I haven't even started treatment." Seraphine grabbed the hem of my jeans. "Please, I know we did you wrong, but he's dying. You're rich now. Just write a check. One check and he lives." Zephyra laughed, a high and brittle sound. "Listen to mommy," begged the little princess. "You think you're better than us because some dead old lady felt sorry for you. You owe us. You ungrateful little." I waited until the echo of her voice died. Then I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I placed 3 thin manila folders in the center of the table. Draven opened the first with shaking fingers. Inside were printouts from the Ohio Medicaid office showing he had been approved for emergency expansion coverage, retroactive to the diagnosis date, plus contact sheets for Christ Hospital's charity care program and 2 hospice providers that accept zero-income patients. Seraphine's folder held admission packets for 3 state-funded adult residential rehab centers with open beds this week, all within 50 minutes of Cincinnati. That was everything we could do for them. Everything that was safe and legal. Zephyra had the same list of help places as before. But she also had papers for the Hamilton County Drug Court program and 2 women's shelters that would take people who were still using drugs. I leaned back in my chair thinking about all this. These were the kinds of help that the state of Ohio gives to adults who are in trouble and struggling. But Beatrix's home was a special place. It was a charity, a 501c3, which meant it could only help kids under 21. Not even one adult could get money from it. If I gave a single penny to any of you adults, the charity would lose all its money. Every child in our program would lose their bed. That is the law. I couldn't break it. I couldn't even think about breaking it. It was not a choice, not even a little. It wasn't personal. It wasn't about liking someone or not. It was the law. Draven opened his mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. His mouth moved like a fish trying to breathe on land. "But I'm your father," he said finally, his voice shaking. "I'm your dad. You can't just treat me like I don't exist." I looked at him calmly. "You stopped being my father the day you gave me a trash bag on my 16th birthday and told me I was old enough to survive on my own. The state of Ohio agreed with you then and it agrees with me now. Nothing has changed." Seraphine's crying grew louder. She banged her forehead on the table. "I'll do anything. I'll sign whatever you want. Just please don't send us away. Please." I shook my head slowly. "There's nothing to sign. There's no form, no agreement. There is only the door. And that is where you need to go." Zephyra suddenly lunged at me, her nails out like claws. Kale was faster. He grabbed her wrist midair and pushed her back into the chair as though she weighed nothing at all. She spat at my feet. I stood up, tall and strong. I said slowly, clearly, "The day you locked me out, you taught me what family really is worth. Today I choose the only family I have left. The 80 kids who never got to choose who gave birth to them, who never had a safe place to sleep, who never knew someone would be there for them no matter what. You are not on that list." I walked to the door and held it open. Security appeared immediately. 2 guards wearing Beatrix's home polos took Draven by the elbows. He didn't fight. Seraphine had to be half-carried, still screaming my name like it was a curse. Zephyra, furious, flipped me off with both hands all the way to the elevator. The glass doors closed. Silence rushed in like cold water. I went straight to my office, printed the final verification packet, and signed my name on the auditor's line. Case number 80. Destiny Marie Evans, age 15. Her parents had thrown her out the night before because they sold her laptop for drug money. She arrived at intake at 11:47 p.m. Permanent housing had already been secured in our Walnut Hills group home. Enrollment paperwork for Hugh STEM High School had been faxed. I carried the folder to the big whiteboard and wrote her name in thick black marker under the other 79. Each of those names represented a kid we had pulled off the street, a child who had no home and no one to care for them. Destiny's name joined them. The independent auditor arrived at 11:59 p.m., reviewed the file, stamped it approved, and shook my hand. At 1:21 a.m. the bank notification hit my phone. $52 million. Unrestricted. Irrevocably mine. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel revenge. I felt finished. I had completed something that mattered more than money, more than anger, more than hate. I turned off the office lights and walked down the empty hallway. On the walls hung photos of every kid we had rescued, every child who had once been invisible but was now thriving. I took the elevator to the roof. The city below was quiet. Somewhere down there, the three people who used to share my last name were learning what rock bottom really felt like. I didn't hate them anymore. I didn't even know them. Winter arrived early that year. It was the kind of cold that bites through your coat and turns the Ohio River into a gray hard sheet of ice. Draven died on a Tuesday in late January at University of Cincinnati Medical Center. The hospital social worker called Thorian because my old number was still listed as next of kin on some old form. He lasted 3 days after our confrontation. Medicaid covered only comfort care. The aggressive drugs that might have extended his life required cash up front, which he did not have. The death certificate read metastatic small cell carcinoma and respiratory failure. No service was held. A county cremation followed 2 days later. I learned all of this from the obituary Thorian forwarded. I did not attend. I did not send flowers. I did not cry. Seraphine lost the house in March. The foreclosure auction happened on the courthouse steps in Columbus while she sat in her rusted old Corolla across the street with the engine running to keep warm. When the gavel fell, she drove south on I-71 with whatever fit in the trunk. She bounced between extended stay motels along I-75, Red Roof in Sharonville, Super 8 in Monroe, until the credit cards were maxed out. By May, her phone went dark, and her trail ended somewhere near the Kentucky line. No one I knew ever heard from her again. Zephra walked out of Talbert House halfway through the mandated 30-day program. Within weeks, she hit 3 different Kroger stores in Hamilton County in a single weekend, hiding razor blades down her sleeve at one store, steak and laundry detergent at another, and cold medicine at the third. Every store had upgraded cameras and every theft was clear as day. She was arrested leaving the third store with $412 worth of stolen merchandise in a baby stroller. The prosecutor charged her with 3 counts of felony theft. Because of 2 prior shoplifting convictions, the judge sentenced her to 20 months at the Ohio Reformatory for Women in Marysville. She is inmate Dow Jaquin 874. Now her projected release date is late next year, assuming good behavior. None of them ever tried to contact me again. No letters. No collect calls from jail. No messages through mutual acquaintances. The line that had been cut on my 16th birthday stayed cut. While they disappeared, Beatrix's home grew. We opened a 12-bed facility in Cleveland's Ohio City neighborhood in February and a second in Dayton's Edgemont section by June. The unrestricted trust let us buy buildings outright instead of leasing, hire full-time therapists instead of contractors, and stock every pantry like it was Thanksgiving year-round. By fall, we were serving over 300 kids at any given time, with satellite offices in Toledo and Akron already under contract. In November, the Columbus Foundation and the Ohio Philanthropy Association jointly named me Young Philanthropist of the Year. The ceremony was held at the Ohio Theater downtown. I wore a simple black dress and stood under the chandelier while they read statistics. 312 minors permanently housed. 187 high school diplomas earned. 94 trade certifications completed. 0 returns to homelessness among graduates. The applause was loud, but it felt distant, like it was for the kids, not for me. Cale sat in the front row in a tux that actually fit, grinning like he had won the lottery himself. When they called my name, he was the first one on his feet. I accepted the glass award, thanked the board, thanked Thorian, who stood quietly in the wings, thanked every caseworker and foster parent and teacher who had ever stayed late for one of our kids. Then I said the only thing that mattered. This isn't my award. It belongs to the girl who slept under the Brent Spence Bridge with a broken arm and still graduated valedictorian. It belongs to the boy who aged out of foster care at 18 and now teaches welding to the next class. It belongs to every kid who was told they were nothing and proved the world wrong. I just signed the checks. They did the work. I stepped off the stage to another standing ovation. Later in the lobby, a reporter asked if I felt vindicated. I thought about the empty chair where a father should have sat, about a mother who vanished, and about a sister behind bars. No, I answered. I feel free. That night, Cale and I drove back to Cincinnati with the trophy riding shotgun like a passenger. Snow started falling somewhere past Springfield. Big, soft flakes that covered the highway in silence. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. The past was buried under 6 inches of fresh white, and it was going to stay there. The gala took place at the Duke Energy Convention Center in downtown Cincinnati, the grand ballroom lit by 1,000 tiny lights that looked like captured stars. I stood on the stage in a plain midnight blue dress that cost less than most people's shoes that night. The master of ceremonies had just finished reading the citation. 543 minors permanently housed, 211 college scholarships funded, 98% high school graduation rate among our kids. The room rose in a wave of applause. I waited until it settled, then stepped forward and took the microphone. Thank you truly. But tonight isn't about numbers. I looked out over the sea of faces. Donors in tuxedos, politicians in practice smiles, reporters with phones raised, caseworkers who had worked 70-hour weeks for years. And in the very front row, Cale Thorne, 20 years old, wearing the first suit he had ever owned, eyes shining. I swallowed once. 7 years ago, I was thrown out on my 16th birthday with a trash bag of clothes and $23. Tonight, I stand here because one woman I never met decided a stranger's pain could become someone else's power. But there is one more thing I need to do before this night ends. Thorian appeared carrying a small leather folder. He handed it to me and stepped back. I opened it and held up the papers so the cameras could see. Effective this morning, the Hamilton County Probate Court had approved my petition to legally adopt Cale Thorne as my son. He said, yes. A gasp rippled through the room. I looked straight at Cale. Come here. He walked up the 3 steps like he was floating. When he reached me, I pulled him into the tightest hug I had ever given anyone in my life. The ballroom cameras flashed like lightning. I kept one arm around him and spoke into the microphone again. Blood doesn't make a family. Choice does. I lost one family the day I was told I was no longer wanted. Tonight I won the one I chose. And who chose me back? Cale is my son. And every single kid we have ever helped, they're mine too. All 543 of them. I'm 23 years old and I already have more children than most people have in a lifetime. And I am the luckiest mother alive. The applause started slowly, then exploded. People stood so fast, chairs scraped and tipped. Cale's shoulders shook against mine. I felt warm tears on my neck that weren't even my own. I let it wash over us for a long minute, then raised a hand. The room quieted. I used to think revenge would feel sweet, I said. It doesn't. Freedom feels sweet. Love feels sweet. Watching a kid who once slept in a cardboard box walk across a graduation stage in a cap and gown. That is the sweetest thing I have ever tasted. I looked down at Cale again. He grinned through the tears, leaned close to the microphone and said the 6 words that finished me. Can we go home now, Mom? The entire ballroom lost it. Grown men in $1,000 suits wiped their eyes. Women dabbed mascara with napkins. Someone started chanting, Mom. And 500 voices picked it up until the chandeliers trembled. I laughed through my own tears and nodded. Yes, baby. Let's go home. We walked off the stage hand in hand while the orchestra struck up. You'll never walk alone. Flashbulbs popped like fireworks. Thorian waited in the wings, eyes suspiciously bright, holding both our coats. Outside, the December air was sharp and clean. Snow started falling again, soft and silent, blanketing the city in forgiveness I no longer needed to give. Cale opened the passenger door of the SUV for me, then paused. For the record, he said, I've been calling you Mom in my head for 3 years already. I pulled him down by his tie and kissed his forehead. Good, because I've been thinking of you as my son since the night you let me cry in that stupid private jet bathroom and didn't tell a soul. We drove back across the river with the city lights sparkling on fresh snow. The mansion on the hill was lit up like Christmas. every window glowing because the kids had insisted on waiting up. When we walked through the front door, 40 teenagers in pajamas swarmed us, screaming, "Surprise and welcome home, Mom." And we saw it on TV. Someone had strung a banner across the grand staircase. "Welcome to your forever family." I stood in the middle of that beautiful chaos, coat still snowy, surrounded by children who had once had nothing and now had everything because someone finally chose them. Kale wrapped an arm around my shoulders. I looked up at him and smiled, the first completely unburdened smile of my life. This was the real inheritance. Not $52 million. 543 hearts that beat because mine refused to break. And one tall, proud young man who chose me right back.